Captain Lisa Morgan stared at the massive space station floating in the darkness ahead of her ship. The distress signal had been weak but clear, coming from what was supposed to be an abandoned research facility in neutral space. She had never seen anything like this station before. It was huge, with strange curved walls that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. "Captain, I'm reading life signs inside," said Dr. Maya Torres from her science station. Maya was young but brilliant, always excited about discovering new things. "There are at least 6 different beings aboard that station," Lisa frowned. The reports said this place had been empty for years. "Any idea what species we're dealing with?" "The readings are strange," Maya replied, checking her instruments again. "I think I see human signatures, but there are others I don't recognize." Commander Kate Williams stepped forward from her position near the weapons console. Kate was Lisa's most trusted officer, a woman who never backed down from a fight. "Could be a trap, Captain. This sector has been quiet for too long." Lisa nodded, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. The distress signal wasn't asking for rescue from attack or pirates. It was asking for help with a system failure. "Prepare a small away team," she ordered. "Maya, Kate, you're with me. We go in, careful, and ready." The 3 women took a small shuttle to the station's docking bay. The bay doors opened automatically, which was strange for a station in distress. Inside, everything looked clean and new, not like an abandoned facility at all. Emergency lights blinked red along the corridors, and they could hear the hum of failing life support systems. "This way," Lisa said, following the strongest life sign readings on her scanner. They walked through long hallways lined with doors. That wouldn't open. Whatever had gone wrong with the station, it had locked down everything. They found the first group of beings in what looked like a meeting room. 3 tall, graceful creatures with pointed ears and silver hair stood near one wall. Lisa had heard stories about elves but had never seen one in person. They were beautiful in an otherworldly way, with large eyes that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. One of the elves stepped forward. She was clearly their leader, wearing robes that sparkled like starlight. "I am Arya Moonwhisper of the Mayan Elven Confederation," she said in a musical voice. "We are trapped here by some kind of system malfunction." Before Lisa could respond, a deep growling sound came from the other side of the room. 3 massive creatures emerged from the shadows. They walked on 2 legs like humans and elves, but they had scales instead of skin, sharp claws, and eyes that burned like fire. Dragons. Lisa had heard even more stories about dragons, and none of them were pleasant. The largest dragon stepped forward, her red scales gleaming in the emergency lighting. She was clearly female, with a proud bearing that spoke of nobility and power. "I am Zixandra of the Draconian Empire," she announced, her voice like controlled thunder. "We demand to know why we are being held prisoner." Lisa raised her hands to show she meant no harm. "I'm Captain Lisa Morgan of the Human Federation. We received your distress call and came to help. We're trapped here too now." The elf named Arya looked surprised. "Distress call? We sent no distress call. We were brought here for diplomatic negotiations." Zixandra's eyes flared brighter. "Negotiations that were supposed to be secret. How did humans learn of this meeting?" Kate stepped closer to Lisa, her hand moving toward her weapon. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Maya was busy, scanning everything with her instruments, fascination overcoming her fear. "The station's computer systems are completely locked down," Maya announced. "Whatever happened here, it's trapped all of us together. The doors won't open and I can't access any of the main controls." Arya closed her eyes for a moment, and Lisa felt a strange tingling in her mind. The elf was trying to use some kind of mental power. "I cannot reach beyond these walls with my thoughts," Arya said, opening her eyes with concern. "Something is blocking all communication." Zixandra examined one of the sealed doors, running her claws along its surface. "These barriers are stronger than they appear. Even my fire cannot melt them." She breathed a small flame to demonstrate, but the door remained unmarked. Lisa looked around the room at their situation. 6 beings from 3 different species, all trapped together in a failing space station. The air already felt thinner, and the temperature was dropping. They would need to work together to survive, but the hatred between elves and dragons was legendary. How long can the life support last? Lisa asked Maya. Maya checked her readings again. Maybe 2 days, possibly 3 if we're careful, but the temperature is dropping fast. We'll freeze before we run out of air. Arya and Zixandra glared at each other across the room. Centuries of conflict between their peoples couldn't be forgotten, easily, even in a crisis. The elves blamed dragons for destroying their homeworld. The dragons claimed the elves had attacked first with their mind powers. We should search for another way out, Kate suggested. There has to be an emergency exit or maintenance tunnel. Agreed, said Zixandra. But we search separately. I will not turn my back on elves. Arya's musical voice turned cold. The feeling is mutual, dragon. Your kind cannot be trusted. Lisa stepped between them. Look, I don't know the history between your peoples, and right now I don't care. We're all going to die if we don't work together. Whatever happened in the past stays in the past. The dragon warrior laughed, but there was no humor in it. Spoken, like a young race that knows nothing of true loss. Your species has existed for what? A few thousand years? We have been fighting this war since before your ancestors learned to make fire. Arya nodded in rare agreement with the dragon. Some wounds run too deep for simple cooperation, human. You ask us to forget genocide. Maya suddenly looked up from her scanner with excitement. Wait, I'm reading something strange. This station isn't just a meeting place. There are research labs here and some kind of archive. The technology is unlike anything I've ever seen. Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. If this station contained unknown technology, that might explain why someone wanted the negotiations to fail. It might also explain why they were all trapped together. We need to find those archives, Lisa said. Maybe they contain information about how to escape. Zixandra's eyes narrowed. Or maybe they contain weapons that could tip the balance of power in this sector. Arya stepped forward, her own suspicions rising. Is this why humans really came here? To steal ancient secrets? The distrust was growing stronger, but so was the cold. Lisa could see her breath in the air now. Soon the arguing would stop, because they would all be frozen solid. Whatever secrets this station held, they would die with them unless something changed. The emergency lights flickered, and in the brief darkness that followed, Lisa realized that someone or something had wanted them all here together. The question was why, and whether they would live long enough to find out. The temperature in the station had dropped so much that Lisa could see ice forming on the walls. She rubbed her hands together, trying to keep warm as she watched the 3 species eye each other with growing suspicion. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows that made everyone look more threatening than they probably were. Arya hugged her starlight robes closer to her body. Even with her elegant clothing, she was shivering. This cold will kill us all before we have a chance to escape, she said, her musical voice now strained with discomfort. Zixandra seemed less affected by the cold, but Lisa noticed that even the dragon's breath was creating small clouds in the freezing air. Dragons are built for heat, Zixandra admitted reluctantly, but even we have limits. Maya was still scanning everything with her instruments, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear of the cold. Captain, I think I found something, she said excitedly. There are power conduits running through this section. If we could access them, maybe we could restore heat to this area. Kate examined the walls where Maya was pointing. The access panels are sealed just like everything else. We'd need tools to cut through. Zixandra stepped forward, flexing her claws. Perhaps I can help with that. She approached one of the panels and began carefully cutting around its edges with her sharp talons. The metal was tough, but dragon claws were tougher. Arya watched the dragon work with obvious discomfort. Even now you resort to violence and destruction, she said coldly. The dragon paused in her cutting and turned to face the elf. Everything is violence to your kind, unless it involves crawling inside someone's mind without permission. We do not crawl, Arya replied, her eyes flashing with anger. We touch minds with respect, and only when necessary. Lisa decided to step in before the argument could escalate. Maya, tell us about the station's layout. Where are these archives you detected? Maya consulted her scanner. 3 levels down, in what looks like the most protected part of the station. But, Captain, The readings are strange. Some of the technology down there is giving off signatures I've never seen before." While Maya spoke, Zixandra finished cutting. Through the access panel, inside they could see a tangle of cables and conduits, some of which were sparking dangerously. The dragon pulled back quickly as small bolts of electricity shot out. "The power systems are damaged," Kate observed. "We could try to reroute power from another section, but someone would have to go in there and make connections manually." Arya closed her eyes and extended her hands toward the damaged panel. "Perhaps I can sense which connections are safe and which are dangerous. My telepathic abilities sometimes allow me to feel the flow of energy." Zixandra snorted with derision. "Elf magic will not fix what requires real skill and strength." "It is not magic," Arya replied patiently. "It is simply using senses that your kind has never developed." Lisa watched as Arya placed her hands near the sparking cables. The elf's face grew peaceful and concentrated, as if she was listening to something only she could hear. After a few moments, she opened her eyes. "There," she said, pointing to specific cables. "Those 3 carry power safely. The others are overloaded and dangerous." Kate looked skeptical. "How can you be sure?" "Because I can feel the electric current like a living thing," Arya explained. "It flows smoothly through some paths and fights against others." Zixandra examined the cables Arya had indicated. "The elf might be right," she admitted grudgingly. "These cables are cooler than the others, and the metal around them shows less heat damage." Working together, they managed to reroute power to the heating system in their section. Warm air began flowing from the vents, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But the cooperation was fragile, built only on necessity. As they warmed up, the deeper tensions between the species became more apparent. Maya, always curious about other cultures, began asking questions that made everyone uncomfortable. "How long have elves and dragons been at war?" she asked innocently. Arya's expression darkened. "Since the dragons destroyed Silverleaf, our homeworld, 800 years ago. They burned our forests, killed our children, and left our planet a dead rock floating in space." Zixandra's eyes flared with anger. "We defended ourselves against elven mind control. Your people tried to turn our own warriors against us, making them kill their own families. We had no choice but to strike first." "That is a lie," Arya said, her voice rising. "We used our abilities only to promote peace and understanding." "By forcing your thoughts into unwilling minds," Zixandra shot back. "By making dragons think and feel whatever served elven purposes." Lisa held up her hands. "Stop! Fighting about the past won't help us get out of here." But Maya was fascinated despite the tension. "Wait, you said 800 years ago? How old are you?" Arya looked uncomfortable. "Elves live much longer than humans. I have seen 4 centuries pass." Zixandra seemed proud to answer. "Dragons can live for thousands of years. I am young by my people's standards, only 600 years old." Kate whistled in amazement. "You two have been alive since before humans even left their home planet." "Yes," said Arya sadly. "We have watched your kind grow from primitive creatures to space travelers in what feels like a moment to us. And in that short time," added Zixandra, "humans have already begun trying to expand into territory that belongs to older races." Lisa felt defensive. "We're explorers, not conquerors. We seek knowledge and friendship with other species." Arya and Zixandra exchanged a look that suggested they had heard such claims before. For a moment, their shared skepticism about humans created an unexpected bond between them. "Your kind always says that at first," Arya said gently. "But as you grow stronger, your definition of friendship begins to change." "We have seen it before with younger races," Zixandra agreed. "First they ask for help, then they demand equality. Then they try to rule over those who were ancient when their world was young." Maya looked hurt by their words. "We're not like that. We genuinely want to learn from you." "Perhaps," said Arya, "but your people's hunger for knowledge is sometimes dangerous. There are things in the universe that should remain hidden." Kate's military training made her suspicious. "Are you talking about weapons? Technologies that could be used against other species?" Zixandra's laugh was like the rumble of distant thunder. "Everything can be used as a weapon, human, knowledge most of all." The conversation was interrupted when Maya's scanner began beeping urgently. She checked the readings and her face went pale. Captain, I'm detecting movement in the lower levels. Something big is down there, and it's heading this way. Everyone became alert. Kate moved toward the sealed doors, checking for any way to defend their position. Arya closed her eyes, trying to sense whatever was approaching with her telepathic abilities. I feel something, she said with worry. But it's not like any mind I've encountered before. It's old, very old, and it's been sleeping. Zixandra's nostrils flared as she tested the air. I smell something ancient. Stone and metal and time itself. The lights in their section flickered, and they heard a deep rumbling sound coming from somewhere below them. Whatever was down there, it was large enough to make the entire station vibrate as it moved. Lisa made a quick decision. We need to get to those archives Maya detected. If something is waking up down there, we need to understand what we're dealing with. The archives are on the same level as whatever is moving, Maya warned. Then we'll have to take that risk, Lisa replied. Standing here arguing about ancient history won't keep us alive. But as she said those words, Lisa realized that the ancient history between elves and dragons might be more important than she had thought. If this station contained secrets from the distant past, those secrets might explain why the three species had been brought together in this place. The rumbling sound grew louder, and somewhere in the depths of the station, something that had been sleeping for a very long time was finally beginning to wake up. The rumbling from below grew stronger, and suddenly the station shook so violently that everyone was thrown to the floor. Emergency alarms began blaring and new red lights flashed along the walls. Maya's scanner was going crazy with readings she had never seen before. The life support system just took major damage, Maya announced, struggling to read her instruments while the station continued to shake. We've lost atmosphere in 3 sections and more areas are losing pressure. Lisa helped Arya to her feet, while Kate assisted one of the other elves who had been knocked down. Zixandra was already standing, her powerful legs having kept her balanced during the tremor. We cannot stay here, Zixandra declared. This station is falling apart around us. Arya nodded in agreement, her earlier hostility toward the dragon temporarily forgotten in the face of immediate danger. I can sense that whatever is awakening below us is causing these tremors. We must reach the archives before the station is destroyed. Another violent shake threw them all against the walls. This time, they heard the horrible sound of metal tearing and atmosphere rushing out into space. One of the sealed doors in their section suddenly buckled inward. The hull is breaching, Kate warned. We need to find a safe route to the lower levels, fast. Maya consulted her scanner again. There's a maintenance shaft 2 corridors over that leads down to the archive level, but we'll have to cross 3 sections that are losing atmosphere. Lisa made a quick decision. We move together. Everyone stays close, and if anyone falls behind, we all stop. Zixandra looked at the humans with surprise. You would risk your lives for strangers, for enemies of your allies? Right now, we're all just people trying to survive, Lisa replied. The politics can wait until we're safe. They made their way through corridors that were growing darker as more systems failed. The artificial gravity was becoming unstable, making each step uncertain. In some areas, they had to crawl along the walls as the gravity shifted direction. When they reached the first damaged section, they could see stars through a crack in the hull. The breach was small but growing, and the rushing air created a wind that threatened to pull them toward the gap. Link arms, Kate ordered. We cross as a chain so no one gets pulled away. Arya hesitated, looking at Zixandra's scaled arm with obvious discomfort. The dragon noticed her reluctance and snorted with disgust. Even facing death, you cannot bear to touch a dragon, Zixandra said with bitter amusement. It is not about touching, Arya replied quietly. When I make physical contact with others, I sometimes cannot control my telepathic abilities. I might accidentally share thoughts or emotions. Zixandra's expression changed from anger to something like understanding. You fear what you might learn about me. I fear what you might learn about me, Arya corrected. Despite her fear, the elf reached out and grasped the dragon's arm. The moment their skin touched, both beings gasped and their eyes went wide. For several seconds, they stood frozen, sharing something that the others could not understand. Move, Lisa urged, and the chain of 6 beings began crossing the damaged section. The wind from the hull breach tried to tear them apart, but their linked arms held firm. When they reached safety on the other side, Arya and Zixandra quickly released each other, both looking shaken by whatever they had experienced during their telepathic contact. "What did you see?" Maya asked, with scientific curiosity. Arya looked at Zixandra uncertainly. "I saw the moment when dragon children died on Silverleaf. I felt their fear and pain as if it were my own." Zixandra's voice was quieter than before, and I experienced the elf families fleeing their burning forests, carrying babies who would never see their homeworld again. The revelation hung heavy in the air between them. For the first time, each had experienced the war from the other's perspective. "Both of our peoples suffered," Arya said softly. "Both of our peoples caused suffering." They continued through the station, but the atmosphere between the elf and dragon had changed. The touching of minds had created a fragile understanding where none had existed before. The maintenance shaft Maya had detected was a narrow tube that dropped straight down through the station's core. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow down its length, and they could feel warm air rising from below. "Something is definitely active down there," Maya observed. "The temperature is much higher than the rest of the station." Kate tested the ladder rungs in the shaft. They seemed solid, enough to support everyone's weight. "I'll go first. Maya, you're second so you can guide us to the archives. Captain, you're third." "I will go last," Zixandra announced. "If something follows us, dragon claws are better weapons than anything else we have." As they climbed down through the darkness, the rumbling grew louder and more rhythmic. It almost sounded like breathing, as if some enormous creature was slowly waking from a very long sleep. "How much further?" Lisa called down to Maya. "Almost there," Maya replied. "The archive level should be just below us." They emerged from the maintenance shaft into a corridor that was completely different from the upper levels. Here the walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with its own light. Strange symbols covered every surface, symbols that none of them recognized. "This technology is ancient," Maya breathed, running her scanner over the crystal walls. "These readings are unlike anything in our databases." Arya approached one of the symbol-covered walls and placed her hand against it. Immediately, the symbols began to glow brighter, and she gasped with surprise. "I can sense something," she said with wonder. "These walls contain memories, stored somehow in the crystal itself." Zixandra examined the symbols more closely. "Some of these markings look familiar. Very old dragon script contains similar patterns, but these are far more complex." They followed the glowing corridor deeper into the archive level. The rhythmic rumbling was much louder here, and they could feel vibrations in the crystal floor with each pulse. Finally, they reached a massive chamber filled with towering crystal formations. Each formation pulsed with light in rhythm with the rumbling sound. At the center of the chamber stood a platform with what looked like a control console made of the same glowing crystal. But it was not the technology that made them all stop and stare in amazement. Suspended in the largest crystal formation at the far end of the chamber was a dragon unlike any they had ever seen. This dragon was enormous, even larger than the biggest of Zixandra's people. Its scales were deep blue and silver, and even in its suspended state, it radiated ancient power and wisdom. "An elder dragon," Zixandra whispered with awe. "But this one is older than any in our recorded history." Maya's scanner was registering massive energy readings from the suspended dragon. "It's alive," she announced with amazement. "Somehow, it's been kept in perfect stasis for who knows how long." As they watched, the dragon's eyes slowly opened, revealing depths of knowledge and memory that seemed to span eons. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the crystal chamber like distant thunder. "So," the ancient dragon said, "the children of the stars have finally come together as was foretold. I am Veltar, last keeper of the archives. I have been waiting a very long time to tell you the truth about your origins." The crystal formations around them pulsed brighter, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images of light, showing scenes from the distant past when the galaxy was young and very different from what they knew today. The ancient dragon Veltar slowly emerged from his crystal prison, his massive form unfolding with careful grace. Despite his enormous size, he moved with the dignity of great age and wisdom. The crystal chamber responded to his presence, filling, with swirling lights that formed images in the air around them. "You are all much younger than you appear," Veltar said, his ancient voice carrying amusement. "Even I, who have lived for 5,000 years, am young compared to the truth I must share." Lisa found her voice first. "Truth about what? Our origins?" The elder dragon's eyes focused on her with interest. "Humans, the newest children of the stars. Your people have grown so quickly, yet you understand so little about your place in the great pattern." Maya was frantically scanning everything, her instruments overwhelmed by the energy readings in the chamber. "Captain, the technology here is beyond anything we've encountered. It's like the station itself is alive." Veltar gestured with one massive claw, and the lights around them formed into the shape of a galaxy. "Long ago, before any of your peoples had learned to speak, there existed a race called the Architects. They were the first to travel between stars, the first to understand the deep connections that bind all life together." Arya stepped forward, her telepathic senses drawn to the images of light. "I can feel their presence in these memories. They were not unlike elves, but different too. They had abilities we can barely comprehend." "The Architects seeded life throughout this galaxy," Veltar continued. "Not randomly, but with purpose. They created dragons to be guardians of strength and honor. They shaped elves to be keepers of knowledge and wisdom, and they planted the seeds that would one day grow into humanity." Zixandra's eyes flared with disbelief. "That cannot be true. Dragons evolved naturally on our homeworld." "Did you?" Veltar asked gently. "Tell me, young dragon, why can your people breathe fire when no other species in the galaxy has that ability? Why do elves live for centuries when most intelligent species live much shorter lives? Why do humans adapt to new environments faster than should be possible?" The questions hung in the air as each group considered what they thought they knew about their own origins. Maya was the first to grasp the implications. "You're saying we're all related? That we're part of some kind of experiment?" "Not an experiment," Veltar corrected. "A plan. The Architects foresaw a great danger coming to this galaxy, something that would threaten all life. They created your three species to work together when that time came." Kate's military training made her suspicious. "What kind of danger? And why haven't we seen any sign of these Architects?" The elder dragon's expression grew sad. "Because they sacrificed themselves to delay the danger they had foreseen. The enemy came sooner than expected, and the Architects used their own life force to create barriers that have held for thousands of years. But those barriers are weakening." The lights in the chamber shifted, showing images of dark spaces between stars where nothing should exist. In those empty regions, they could see shapes moving, things that seemed to devour light itself. "The Devourers," Veltar whispered. "They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind. The Architects knew they would return, and they prepared your peoples to stand against them." Arya placed her hand on one of the crystal formations, and suddenly her mind was flooded with memories from the Architects themselves. She gasped and staggered backward. "I saw them," she said with wonder and fear. "The Architects died to save us all, but their sacrifice was only meant to buy time. Time for us to grow strong enough to face what's coming." Zixandra looked around the chamber with new understanding. "This is why we were brought here together. Someone knew we would need to learn this truth. But someone else tried to stop us," Lisa realized. "The station malfunctions, the sealed doors, the life support failures. Someone wanted to prevent this meeting." Veltar nodded gravely. "There are those among all your peoples who profit from conflict and division. They have learned fragments of the truth, but chosen to use that knowledge for their own gain rather than for the good of all." Maya consulted her scanner again. "I'm detecting other life signs in the station, multiple groups, and they're moving toward this chamber." Kate immediately moved to a defensive position. "How many and what kind?" "Mixed species," Maya replied. "Humans, elves, and dragons. But they're not moving like rescue teams. They're moving like hunting parties." The chamber suddenly shook as explosions echoed through the station above them. Veltar's eyes blazed with anger. "They seek to destroy the archives rather than let the truth be known." he said. "These extremists from your peoples have been working together in secret, keeping your races divided so they can maintain their power." Arya closed her eyes and extended her telepathic senses upward through the station. "I can feel their minds. They're filled with hatred and fear, but also with knowledge they've kept hidden. They know about the architects, and they know about the coming danger. Why would they want to keep us divided if we're supposed to work together?" Lisa asked. Zixandra's expression was grim. "Because united, our peoples would have no need for the weapons dealers, the war profiteers, and the politicians who gain power from conflict." More explosions shook the station, closer this time. Veltar began moving toward the crystal console at the center of the chamber. "I must transfer the archives to your minds before they can be destroyed," he announced. "Each of you will carry part of the knowledge back to your peoples." "Is that safe?" Maya asked with concern. "No," Veltar admitted. "The knowledge is vast, and your minds are young. But it is the only way to preserve the truth." Kate was monitoring the chamber entrances. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. I can hear fighting in the corridors above us." Veltar placed his massive claws on the crystal console, and the entire chamber blazed with light. Streams of energy flowed from the crystal formations into the minds of the 6 beings, filling them with memories and knowledge that spanned millennia. Lisa felt her consciousness expand as she absorbed information about star maps, technology, and the history of the galaxy. Arya received knowledge about the deeper connections between all living things. Zixandra learned about ancient weapons and defenses that could stand against the Devourers. But with the knowledge came pain, as they also experienced the final moments of the architects and understood the magnitude of the sacrifice that had been made for their survival. When the transfer was complete, they all staggered under the weight of what they now knew. The galaxy was much older and more dangerous than any of them had imagined, and their 3 species had been created for a purpose that was both terrifying and magnificent. "Now you understand," Veltar said weakly. The knowledge transfer had drained much of his remaining strength. "Your peoples must unite, or all will be lost when the Devourers break through the failing barriers." The sound of weapons fire echoed from the corridors leading to the chamber. The extremists had found them, and they were coming to ensure that the truth would die with everyone who had learned it. But now Lisa, Arya, and Zixandra looked at each other with new understanding. They were not enemies forced together by circumstance. They were part of an ancient plan, children of the same, creators, and the galaxy's last hope against an enemy that threatened all life itself. The sound of weapons fire grew louder as the extremists fought their way through the station's defenses toward the archive chamber. Veltar, weakened from transferring the ancient knowledge, gestured toward a hidden passage behind the largest crystal formation. "There is another way out," he said with effort. "But first, you must make copies of the most important archive data. Your peoples will never believe the truth without proof." Maya quickly connected her scanner to the crystal console, downloading everything she could before they had to flee. The device glowed hot in her hands as it struggled to contain information that was never meant for such simple technology. "Got it," she announced. "At least the basic star charts and historical records." Kate positioned herself near the chamber entrance, listening to the approaching sounds of battle. "Multiple groups, fighting each other out there," she reported. "I think some of the extremists are turning on each other." Arya reached out with her telepathic abilities to sense what was happening in the corridors above. "The knowledge transfer created ripples through the station's crystal matrix," she explained. "Anyone with telepathic sensitivity felt echoes of what we learned. Some of them are beginning to question their orders." Zixandra examined the hidden passage Veltar had shown them. It was narrow, but led upward toward what looked like an emergency escape route. "This tunnel connects to the station's outer hull," she observed. "We could reach the docking bay where your ship is waiting." "What about you?" Lisa asked Veltar. "You can't stay here." The ancient dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. "Child of the stars, I am far too old and large to flee through maintenance tunnels. But I am not defenseless." His eyes blazed with inner fire. "I will ensure that none of the extremists leave this station alive to threaten the truth you now carry." Before anyone could argue, explosions echoed from multiple directions as different groups of extremists finally breached the chamber's outer defenses. Armed figures in mixed uniforms burst through the entrances, weapons raised and ready to fire. "Kill them all," shouted a human in black armor. "The archives must be destroyed." But as the extremists opened fire, they discovered that Veltar had not been idle during his long imprisonment. The crystal formations throughout the chamber responded to his will, creating barriers of solid light that absorbed the energy blasts. Counterattacks of focused crystal energy struck back at the attackers. "Go," Veltar commanded. "I will hold them as long as possible." The 6 companions rushed into the hidden passage as the chamber behind them erupted into full battle. Veltar's roars of challenge echoed through the crystal corridors as he fought to protect the knowledge he had guarded for so long. The passage was a tight fit, especially for Zixandra, but it led steadily upward through the station's superstructure. Behind them, they could hear explosions and the sound of crystal formations being shattered by heavy weapons. The extremists came prepared, Kate observed grimly. They knew exactly what kind of defenses they'd face here, which means they've been planning this for a long time, Arya added. The peace negotiations, our imprisonment here, everything was orchestrated to bring us together and then eliminate us. They emerged from the passage near the station's docking bay, where Lisa's ship waited. But they were not alone. More extremists had positioned themselves between the passage exit and the ship, clearly expecting them to use this escape route. "Surrender the archive data," called an elf in dark robes. "Your peoples are not ready for such knowledge." "The truth belongs to everyone," Arya replied, stepping forward to face her own kind. "You have no right to decide what others should know." A dragon in black scales landed near the elf, her eyes burning with fanatic fervor. "The old ways are best," she declared. "Conflict keeps all species strong. Peace makes them weak." Zixandra's own eyes flared in response. "You speak of strength while hiding in shadows and plotting murder. Where is the honor in that?" The confrontation might have turned into another battle, but Maya suddenly pointed her scanner at the station's outer hull. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup in the lower levels. I think Veltar is overloading the station's power core." Lisa understood immediately. The ancient dragon was preparing to destroy the entire station to prevent the extremists from escaping with fragments of the archive data. But that would also trap everyone still aboard. "New plan," Lisa announced. "We take the extremists with us." Kate looked at her captain in surprise. "Ma'am, if we leave them here to die, we're no better than they are," Lisa explained. "The archive. Knowledge includes information about forgiveness and redemption. Maybe it's time we started using it." Arya stepped toward the extremist elf. "Come with us," she offered. "Learn the truth for yourself instead of believing what others have told you." The elf's expression wavered between suspicion and curiosity. "What truth?" "That we are all children of the same creators," Zixandra answered, addressing the extremist dragon. "That our conflicts have been manipulated by those who profit from division." The station shook violently as Veltar's power buildup reached critical levels. Cracks appeared in the hull around them, and atmosphere began venting into space. "Decide." "Quickly," Maya urged. "This station is about to become a very large explosion." One by one, the extremists made their choice. Some continued to resist, but others, shaken by what they had sensed during the archive transfer, chose to follow the group toward Lisa's ship. They reached the docking bay just as the station's power core reached overload. Veltar's final roar echoed through the superstructure as he released 5,000 years of stored energy in one devastating blast. Lisa's ship barely escaped the expanding explosion, carrying survivors from all 3 species who now shared knowledge that would change the galaxy forever. As they watched the station's destruction fade behind them, they knew their real work was just beginning. In the months that followed, the archive data was shared with the governments of all 3 species. The proof of common origins and the warning about the devourers forced even the most stubborn leaders to reconsider their ancient prejudices. Arya became the first elven ambassador to the new Trispecies Alliance, using her telepathic abilities to help different cultures understand each other. Zixandra led the first joint military exercises, teaching combined tactics that would be needed against the coming threat. Lisa found herself commanding a mixed crew aboard the first ship designed with technology from all 3 species. Maya continued her research into architect science, making discoveries that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. But perhaps most importantly, they had learned that differences between species were not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. The architects had created diversity, not by accident, but by design, knowing that only by working together could their children survive what was coming. The Devourers had not yet broken through the ancient barriers, but the defenses were weakening. When that day came, the galaxy would be ready with united strength instead of divided weakness. And in quiet moments, when the busy work of building an alliance was done, the survivors would remember an ancient dragon named Veltar, who had sacrificed everything to ensure that the truth would survive, and that the children of the stars would finally come home to each other. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges that would test every species to their limits. But for the first time in centuries, it was a future they would face together, as the architects had always intended.